So Sergio Perez vows to put in a world champion quality performance this weekend, so long as it's not a world champion performance from Suzuka 1990. Sergio Perez is very much in hot water right now. After a very dire Japanese Grand Prix, after a seemingly convincing return to somewhat competence over the last few races, Sergio now finds himself in a very difficult position, and he's not going to be getting any help from Max Verstappen, most pundits reckon. I mean, it kind of makes sense really, because remember last year, the battle for P2 in the standings, which Checo looked like he would actually reasonably get? Until Max decided to not help him out at Interlagos, and then Charles Leclerc got P2 in the standings. So I reckon that Sergio Perez right now, he is on his own. And I am pleased that he is seeking help to try and combat whatever turmoil he's in right now. And the media has been kind of dogging on him, but it's the Red Bull poison chalice all over again. And it's just something that comes with the territory. If Lando Norris becomes Max Verstappen's teammate, he'll receive that same chalice as well. Everybody does. It's nothing personal. It just seems to be that way ever since 2019 when Pierre Gasly first supped the chalice. But the other Red Bull driver? Oh, he's sitting pretty. He can easily win his third title this weekend at the sprint race, which seems to be rubbing people up the wrong way. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't really care. I quite like the sprint races, actually. I don't think that it's really much of an issue. Some folks say that, oh, having this happen and that the points from the sprint can decide the championship, it really takes the luster out of it. But you can't blame mathematics and chance for all of that. It just so happened to coincide with the Qatari Grand Prix. That's just the way it goes. But as far as I'm concerned with the sprint format, I think it's kind of cool, so long as it's paired up with the right sorts of tracks. Zippy, low lap time tracks where you really have to be on your toes all the time, since it's meant to be a sprint of all things. Even Baku kind of worked for a sprint race, but Silverstone, Interlagos, the Red Bull Ring, definitely. So I'll be very curious to see how things go at the Qatar Grand Prix, where it's known to be an absolute tiebreaker and you have to concentrate. Not to mention for the fact that F2, they've been doing sprint races for a long time and it seems to work. It makes everything exciting, and if you're actually at the track, you do get your money's worth, and things are actually really kind of compelling. There are other narratives to be had, and other drivers may get a chance to actually get a win in a sprint race where they might not get one for the feature race, but they need to be paired out at the right sort of track, and they're still Formula One guessing that right now. But Silverstone, yes, sprint race for that, please. And as for the Qatari Grand Prix itself, people were really worried about it and that it really might not provide some excitement for a sprint race, but do you remember the last time out? It was known as a tyre shredder. Nobody was quite sure which tyre was going to go bang next. Fernando Alonso got his first podium of his comeback, and now he's collected many more of them. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen here, and whether teams with really extreme tyre deg will actually be able to hold out the course. I am predicting a puncture for the Haas team, because their tyre deg is the worst. Will this Austin upgrade they keep talking about actually improve things? I don't know, because Gunther Steiner is sort of peddling that back now and sort of diminishing the significance of it, saying, oh, it's actually not going to be that big of a deal, or, oh, we don't really know what it's going to do. You were really talking it up not too long ago, so which one is it? Is this like the McLaren wind tunnel promise all over again? But having said that, though, the legends of the wind tunnel are true, and I will talk more about McLaren later. But the other big news is that Andretti has finally been approved by the FIA to actually proceed into becoming a Formula One team, to then be put into the mix with Formula One management and then potentially rejecting it. Is that actually going to happen though? I don't think so. But what we're going to be expecting for the next few months is a lot of posturing and debating amongst all the big teams, fighting in their own corner, trying to get a really good deal for themselves, self-preservation. So you're going to hear loads and loads of noise, loads and loads of bump, whatever, but don't really worry about that. It is going to happen. It's just going to take a very long time and a lot of deliberating. You can find out more about this information in the video up top. I'll go into more detail there, but just so you know, an 11th team is looking more likely now. But yes, we do need to discuss McLaren. And no, I am not going to need the bobble hat, because quite honestly, there are loads of people talking about the fact that McLaren, Lando Norris, getting his first win at Qatar, the odds are looking very good, because the McLaren car should suit this track. Their tyre deg has vastly improved as well. It may not be the best, but it's certainly pretty decent. But despite all of that, I simply can't call it in their favour. The RB19 is simply too good. Yes, they're no longer developing the car, they're focusing on the RB20 now. Red Bull have built a really good all-round car which works everywhere so long as it's not bumpy. as we saw in Singapore. But the Losail circuit, it's recently been renovated. The track surface is going to be pristine. I would like to think that Lando Norris will give Verstappen a little bit of a challenge, but there will have to be some things going in McLaren's favour to truly make it a close call. A pit stop mistake from Red Bull, a very rare one indeed. Or maybe you might have some sort of engine troubles. You might need a component change, which puts Max Verstappen further down the grid. Lando just gets a better start. And throughout all the medium and high-speed corners where McLaren are really good, Lando might be able to do enough to keep Max behind until the pit stops. Then everything can go from there. Max might need to do an undercut, and then it goes from there. Will Lando be able to do it in an actual out-out battle? I don't think so. And nor do I think that Piastri will actually be joining him on the podium, because despite that MCL60 being really good, we do have to remember here that even though he's my favourite driver currently, Oscar still has some work to do. Yes, he got P3 at Suzuka, which was fantastic, and I will openly admit that he was nowhere near as good as Lando there, but he was pretty decent. He is improving in terms of his race pace and tyre degradation, but he still has a lot to work on. He has done enough to actually keep himself ahead of Ferrari, at least at the Japanese Grand Prix, but I feel like with the reputation that Losail has in terms of breaking its tyres down quite evenly, even though we've actually got the hardest tyre compounds here, Ferrari I think will get the jump on the second McLaren driver. But I feel like he'll still be able to do a good show, he'll be able to collect more and more points, certainly more than the likes of Aston Martin, and they'll get closer, McLaren, to getting P4 in the Constructors. Will they actually be able to do it in time before the end of the season? Definitely, but I don't think they'll go any higher. I think this will be a really good test session for the likes of Oscar, but he will score some decent points. But talking of Ferrari, I feel they actually might be able to do the deed here and get one of their cars on the podium. I feel really confident about Ferrari now. They really seem to have gotten their ducks in a row, especially since Charles Leclerc has actually asserted that he is going to be a Ferrari driver as long as he believes in the project. And with Fred Vasseur there, he said it's been a really big factor in providing more confidence into that theory of his. And that's exactly what I called. They put Fred in there to keep Charles sweet. I'll talk about it more in future videos, but I feel like Charles Leclerc is going to be a Ferrari driver for quite a long time, maybe even the rest of his career. We'll have to wait and see about that regard. But in terms of the Qatar Grand Prix, I feel like Ferrari might have the edge over Mercedes, because we've known up until recently, Ferrari chews through its tyres. But their upgrades have actually been able to fix that mostly, to the point where Mercedes aren't quite sure they have the edge in tyre degradation that they thought they had over the Scuderia. They're now looking over their shoulders and going like, oh dear, those tyres are lasting up. Mercedes should score some decent points, but I don't think they'll be troubling the top 5, and hopefully we won't be getting any more confrontations between the two drivers. I really hope not. But Ferrari, I think they've got the edge for the moment. Then we have Liam Lawson. He has been confirmed to be racing at the Qatar Grand Prix, and this will be his last time out before Daniel Ricciardo returns in all his glory at the Austin Grand Prix, gets to race in front of American fans before he then gets to get to Vegas, and then he'll be absolutely over the moon. But I feel like his comeback, well, I mean his third comeback, will be a little bit tainted, in the sense that Liam Lawson has done a bang-up job. And of course, at the Qatar Grand Prix, he might absolutely bin it. He might have a howler of a weekend, undermining all of the work he's done the last 3 races, and he'll just look an absolute fool and Yuki Tsunoda will romp to some good points and completely outclass him. Or he might not. We don't know what's going to be happening. But for the time being, I feel like Liam Lawson has done a really good job, to the point where Ricciardo's comeback is going to look a little bit iffy. We're going to see Daniel Ricciardo just walking back in to the Austin paddock in his racing overalls, having ousted a rookie driver who had really big potential and not giving him the chance to race. And no one's quite sure about Daniel Ricciardo's performance at the moment. We haven't seen him actually in the upgraded car. He's done some simulator runs, but we need to see him on the track with this upgraded car. If he doesn't actually do much better than Liam Lawson, people will start to question the motives behind his return, and whether or not it's something to do with marketing alone and his performance has gone off quite a bit, and that the tyre test was a little bit of a fluke due to the euphoria of actually being back in the car, and that the McLaren degradation has actually stuck. Or I could be completely wrong, and Daniel Ricciardo gets consistent P6s, P7s, maybe even a P5 every now and again, and AlphaTauri are absolutely golden and looking to try and leapfrog over Alfa Romeo. Anything could happen. We could see Liam having a bad weekend, we could see Daniel next time out having a really good weekend, and that carrying on for the rest of the season. But that uncertainty, that wasn't there when Daniel Ricciardo came back at the Hungarian Grand Prix. That level of doubt, that's stuck. It'll take a really heroic performance for Daniel to be able to shake that Liam Lawson hype off. But okay, time for the predictions. As I said earlier, it's definitely going to be a Max Verstappen win. He is absolutely in his element. The sprint, no, he's going to win that too, because that car is simply too good. This track is going to see the long-held advantage that Red Bull have had, the high-speed corner thing, just completely showing everyone else up. But I think McLaren will be close. But I feel like there will have to be certain things getting in the way for Red Bull to bring McLaren really close to them. Norris will get P2, because this is the kind of track he absolutely adores. Silverstone, need I say more? Imola, Red Bull Ring, where there are tracks where you can hurl the car into it. And of course, the McLaren car is still something he really needs to get to grips with, but he has improved his sentiment towards it in recent races. So he will be close to Max, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Norris-Verstappen title battles in the not too distant future. But who's going to get that P3? I feel like it will be Carlos. Yes, Charles Leclerc has actually been able to best Carlos Sainz in the last couple of races, but I feel like Carlos will be able to get the advantage here because you are going to need some really big brains to try and get the jump over other cars and when to come in for tyres. And I feel like Carlos will be better here. He has actually shown how smart he can be in thinking of strategies on the fly, much like Fernando Alonso can be. And I just feel like this will be another masterclass for Carlos, and Charles Leclerc won't be that far behind, but I feel like the Ferraris will really be on cloud 9 right now, showing upward momentum and the Frederick Vasseur effect really coming into its own as they're fighting for P2 in the Constructors and getting that back. Sure, they won it last year, but that was because they had an absolutely stellar time of it at the beginning of last season, whereas Mercedes were sort of trying to figure things out. Now though, this is a proper battle, and if Ferrari can claw that deficit back and then excel Mercedes, that's going to be a huge boost for their confidence. But Mercedes, if they get P3, yeah, they'll get some extra ATR time. There'll be some smooth with the rough. But as for P5, it is going to be Oscar Piastri, because I feel simply that the tyre deck here is going to be so vast that we might see Oscar maybe P3 for a really long time, and if they don't get the pit calls right, or if it's just simply too strenuous for Oscar, he will fall back, like he did at Hungary when he had that damage and the tyres were sort of fading away from him. So I feel like he'll put in a strong performance and really carry over a really good solid weekend after Suzuka, but I feel like it might be a little bit too iffy. However, in the sprint, I do rate Oscar to do well, like he did at Spa. He would qualify well, tyres won't really matter so much since it'll be a much shorter race, but for the main race though, no, top 5, I think so. But I think Mercedes will be far enough away that they won't be troubling him for P5. I think it might be relatively lonely for him come the end of the race. Max winning the race, no change there then. Much like how there's very little change potentially happening if they don't accept Andretti Formula 1. You can find out more information about that by watching this video next.